Hey, it's Becky. You ready to make some pizza? Okay, you're gonna need a couple things. So I'm gonna wait just a second because I had said I was gonna start right at 9 and I actually had to run a quick errand. One of my kids needed to be dropped off. So we're gonna make pizza. I make pizza every single week, usually on Fridays because pizza is love. Hey, Emily. Okay, so we're gonna make pizza, so we need a couple things. First of all, you need 2 pencils. You need 2 pencils because you might not have fancy hair clips. And if you're looking at me right now, you're thinking, wow, she has really long hair. The last thing you want is to pull a really long hair out of your pizza. So with 2 pencils, if you don't have fancy hair clips, all you do is you make a bun and then you can stick one pencil through and then the other pencil through and it's gonna hold your hair up. So that's what I'm gonna do first is, because I've been on the run, I'm gonna get my hair up and out of the way. That's the first thing. If you have long hair, you work in a kitchen, you wrap your hair around kind of in a little bun thing, then you put a pencil through like you're gonna stab yourself, but don't. And then you kind of go through the bun. And then on the other side, you just pop the pencil through and it's gonna hold the bun in place. See? Japanese style. Isn't that cool? So now the hair is out of the way. Okay, the next thing I need to do is I need to put on an apron because with pizza, there's gonna be kids on here later. With pizza, we use flour and flour gets absolutely everywhere. So I'm gonna put my apron on to protect my clothes. And then this is part one. You can throw pizza dough together, and have your pizza ready to eat in half an hour or 40 minutes once you get fast. But good pizza dough needs some love. It needs time for some of the ingredients to work together and to create their magic. And I've been making pizza every Friday, 15 years, long time. And pizza dough is an art. And depending on where you live and what the weather's like, those are things that are going to impact your pizza dough. So what do you need to make pizza? The first thing you need to do is you need to get your hair up. The second thing you need to do is put your apron on. The next thing you need to do is you need to wash your hands. I'm going to turn around and show you that my kitchen is a mess. Not really. If I hold that just so, you can't see that it's a mess. So I'm washing my hands, and a good way to know that your hands are clean is you say the happy birthday song. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Becky. Almost January 25th. Happy birthday to you. And you clean your hands. I know you know this, but kids that are going to be cooking, I'm stretching to get the towel before I turn the computer around. So now I'm drying my hands, and now I'm ready. I've got my hair up, I've got my apron on. Pizza dough is super simple. All you need is some basic flour, just basic white cake flour. I'm going to move the camera in a second. So you need basic white flour. Because I was running late, you can see I didn't have everything. Oh, look, the kids left the jelly on the counter. Isn't that nice? Look at that. Jelly on the counter. We're going to fix that after this video. Okay, salt. Grabbing salt. And I use regular salt. I usually use Himalaya salt, but I'm out of salt, the Himalayan salt right now. So regular salt and active dry yeast. So those are 2 ingredients. And white flour. I just use regular cake flour. And I make my pizza dough in a mixer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bowl off the mixer so that you can see. I need to grab a knife because I was running late. Okay, so I'm going to, all pizza dough, this pizza dough recipe is 5 cups of flour. So you take a heaping scoop of flour. Let me get in front of the camera. You dig down and you get a heaping scoop of flour, and you use the back of a butter knife to make it flat. And you count to 5. 1, 2, digging deep, 3, oops, see, that's why we wear an apron, 4, this is where I usually have my kid helpers because I lose count as I'm thinking of other things that I have to do in the day, 5. So 5 cups of flour. I'm just gonna set that aside. Then in that bin, in the flour, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. Now, I usually really carefully measure my salt kind of like that, okay? I just threw that in the sink. But when you're first starting to cook, especially when you're making pizza, you want to use a teaspoon, and you just do a level measure of salt right in the dough. Carefully flat, and then just add that to the dough, or to the flour. You set that aside. So that's one part. And I'm going to take my magic wooden spoon, and I'm just going to do a quick mix of that salt in the flour. Then I'm going to get some water in my measuring cup. I need 2 1/4 cups of water. I'm going to come over here to my dirty counter. I'm going to move this stuff out of the way. And I'm going to measure 2 1/4, I'm going to turn on the right faucet, 2 1/4 cups of water. It doesn't need to be warm. Yeast does not like to be hot. It actually kills the yeast. So 2 1/4 cups of water. Spinning you around again. And then from here, I need to add my yeast. So I'm going to take, now yeast is funny. It's a living thing. And if your yeast is bad, it's not going to do what it needs to do. But don't panic. Okay, so in order to make this pizza recipe, I need 1 1/2 teaspoons of yeast. So I'm going to take my 1 teaspoon, and I'm just going to sprinkle it on top of the water. And then I'm going to get 1/2 teaspoon, and I'm going to sprinkle that on top of the water as well. And then I just use my measuring spoon, but I do a quick spin of the yeast on the water so that it gets wet. And then I set that aside, set the yeast aside for a couple minutes for it to activate. What the yeast is going to do is it's going to wake up and it's going to start to digest, and it's going to foam. And you can tell if your yeast is good because the top of the water will actually turn frothy. It'll be foamy on top. And I usually let the yeast sit for 2 or 3 minutes while it starts to activate. And depending on the batch of yeast that you have, it may start to activate immediately. It may take a couple minutes. If the yeast is dead, it won't activate at all. So these are the basic ingredients of this pizza dough. 5 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, you mix that together, then 2 1/4 cups of water, and 1 1/2 teaspoons of yeast. You let the yeast activate, and then over with your flour, what you're gonna do is, I don't have any of those fancy cameras, so in the middle of this bowl, I am going to make a well, which is a fancy word for kind of like a hole in the middle of the flour. I'm going to make a hole in the middle of the flour, and I'm not going to wait for this yeast to activate for this video. I know based on experience and based on this batch of yeast that it's going to work. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to dump that yeast mixture right in the middle of that well in my bowl. I'm going to get all that goodness out. And then set this aside. And then your pizza dough likes love. So I'm going to mix this with my mixer, but before I do, I'm just going to gently incorporate that liquid with that wooden spoon in the bowl. So I'm just gonna take some careful, I'm digging down to the bottom, making sure the liquid touches the bottom of the bowl, and I'm making kind of this watery paste with my wooden spoon. And then I'm gonna put it in my mixer. Now, what if you don't have a mixer? You can do this by hand, but I have a mixer, so I'm not gonna stick my hand in the dough. But you can mix this with your hand. You just dig down to the bottom and scoop it on top until it all becomes one glob of kind of sticky dough. So I'm taking, I have a KitchenAid mixer, so you'd want to use your dough hook or your kneading hook, your bread hook, and you just are cleaning off the wooden spoon because you want all that dough to be part of your pizza. This recipe will make either one large cookie pan size pizza, or in my house I use it to make 5 or 6 individual pizzas for us. So now I'm just going to put that in my mixer, and it only needs a quick mix. I'm going to try and hold the computer up so that you can see what's happening. So I'm just going to turn it on, and I'm just going to do a quick mix on medium until the dough becomes a ball and pulls away from the side of the mixer. It's kind of on medium. See how it kind of lumps together? See how that looks? It's just kind of lumped together. From there, this is just the dough prep part. So now I actually am going to stick my hands in. I put a little bit of flour on my hands so the dough doesn't stick. I'm going to take that dough hook off. Now I have a granite countertop, but you can use a cookie sheet or like the bottom of a cookie sheet or a cutting board. And hey, Steven, come here, babe. I just need another pair of hands. I want to, can you hold this computer so they can see? And you're just gonna hold it so that you can see the this part of the counter and hold it still. So I am taking the dough out of the bowl with my hand. It's sticky. Putting a little bit of flour on top of the dough. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the underneath of the dough and I'm gonna move it to the top. And I'm just grabbing the bottom of the dough and I'm putting it towards the top, kind of pinching it up. If I need some more flour, I put some more flour on there because I don't want it to stick to my hands. And I did this on a lightly floured surface, and I'm turning it over. And then I'm going to take the dough and I'm going to just simply make it a ball of dough. I'm pushing down on the dough. And that's the basic dough prep. I'm going to put it in the bowl, and then I'm going to grab, you can set that down and kind of turn it so they can like tilt the screen so they can still see. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bowl, thanks kiddo, and I'm going to take some saran wrap or cling wrap, and I'm going to create a tight seal on it, and I'm going to set it on the counter, and I'm going to let that dough rise. So that's step 1 of the pizza dough, is it looks like that. It's just dough in a bowl. And now in my house, I live in Washington State. We live in Washington State. It's cold and rainy here. Dough is temperamental. So if you live in a very humid place or a very dry place, the time it's going to take for this dough to rise is going to vary. But what we want is for the pizza dough to double in size. Now where I live, this dough is going to, it's been taking 5 or 6 hours for it to rise at room temperature. So I want the dough to rise to where it's basically touching the top of the saran wrap. It's not rocket science. If it doesn't rise well, sometimes it doesn't, then that's okay. It'll still taste fantastic. But all I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take my dough and I'm gonna leave it on my oven for the rest of the day. And then when I come back at 5 o'clock, we'll go ahead and we'll divide the dough, and I'll show you how to roll it out into pizza. But pizza is really that simple. It's you prep the dough and then you let it rise, and then at that point it's ready for you to actually break apart and roll into pizza dough. The time that it's sitting there, that yeast is activating and it's eating the sugars in the dough and it's releasing the gases, which causes it to rise. And the longer it gets to sit off to the side, the better that pizza dough is going to taste in the end. So easy peasy pizza dough. Hair up, apron on, hands washed, 5 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, mix that together with a wooden spoon, 2.5 cups of water with 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. Let that yeast activate for a minute or 2 or 5, depending on your weather. Then make a well in the flour, add that liquid, mix it with a wooden spoon. At that point, you either knead it with your hands, where kneading is a baking term, where you grabbing and pushing that dough, kind of like just massaging it until it's incorporated together. It's all sticky. Or if you're lucky, you have a mixer, you throw it in the mixer for just a minute to get it all incorporated. Then you put it on a flour surface and you grab the bottom of the dough and pull it up, and you create a ball. You flip it over, create a ball, and then you put it back in the bowl, cover it, and let it sit for a few hours. And that's the prepping of the pizza dough. And then tonight, when we come back, I'm making pizza for the boys and I this evening. So I'm going to be back at 5. And what I'll do then is I will divide the dough and show you how to measure it, how to knead it wonderfully, and then roll it into personal pizzas. And then I'll pop on after that when the pizza comes out so that you can see it complete. So anyway, thanks for joining me. I'll add a couple links over here for you for later, and I will see you tonight when we get to actually make the pizza. Have a great day. Bye. Whoops. And I'm trying to just end the video, but my hands are covered with flowers. So I'm like, okay, how do I get that to actually go? So, and have a good day. See you guys later.